After calling off my engagement to the Ice Queen Heiress, I was finally free. It had been over half a year since I'd even kissed a woman. I took the $5 billion she gave me, blackmailed another $3 billion out of my biased father, and called up my best friend to hit the clubs. I immediately ordered a few of the hottest models in the place to join us. My friend Leo stared, his jaw on the floor. "Aren't you about to marry into the Sterling family? That Chloe Sterling is notoriously rigid and old-fashioned. Her family has a terrifying number of rules. If she found out you were in a place like this, you'd be dead." A lazy smile touched my lips. "Relax. I've already passed the engagement on to the illegitimate son, Ryan." "What?" Leo's eyes bulged in shock. "You gave it away? I thought you always had a thing for Chloe Sterling. You were always talking about how gorgeous she was." My eyes were now cold and clear. Liking someone and being compatible are two different things. Besides, love is great, but freedom is priceless. I'm sure I can find someone who's a better match for my soul. Like, I gently tilted up the chin of the model next to me. "These lovely ladies, for instance." The words had barely left my mouth when the area around us fell eerily silent. From just behind me, a cold voice asked, "Who did you say was not bad?" My body went rigid. I slowly turned my head to see Chloe Sterling standing beside our booth. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she had just crushed a wine glass in her hand. Seeing her so completely lose her composure was, I admit, a surprise. In my past life, I was the wild child of New York's elite, married off to the austere and disciplined Chloe Sterling. She was like a precision instrument, and her demands on me were impossibly strict. I loved clubbing and partying with models, so she had every venue in the city blacklist me. I loved traveling to see the African sun and the northern lights in Iceland, so she confiscated my passport. I loved photography and painting, but she called them frivolous pursuits and locked away my cameras and brushes for good. I was on the verge of losing my mind, forced to learn all her rules and act like a proper gentleman. Then, at a party, I got into a brawl with some trust fund brats who were mocking me. When Chloe arrived and saw my bloodied face, she just said calmly, "My apologies. It's my failure to raise him properly. He really doesn't know how to behave." It was like being struck by lightning. I ran out, my eyes burning with tears, only to be hit by a speeding truck. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn on the eve of my wedding to Chloe. This time, I wanted nothing to do with Chloe or her suffocating love. I just wanted to be my old self again, free, wild, and unrestrained. I rushed downstairs to find my father, Arthur Vance, and told him I was calling off the engagement to Chloe. Arthur's head snapped up, his face contorted with rage. "What is this nonsense now? An alliance with the Sterlings is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I sneered. "If she's such a great catch, then let your precious illegitimate son marry her. I'm happy to give the engagement to him." The anger on Arthur's face instantly melted into delight. "You're really willing to let your brother take your place? Of course, you've always preferred your mistress and her son anyway. After all the money you've poured into raising him, it's the perfect chance for him to marry into a powerful family like the Sterlings." Arthur's face went pale, and he snapped, "Don't be so crude. He's your brother. But since you're so insistent, I'll go to the Sterlings now and discuss changing the groom." With that, he practically jumped to his feet, grabbing his coat and heading for the door. Watching his pathetic, hypocritical act, I couldn't help but find it ironic. I turned, went upstairs to grab some explosives and my wallet, and left right after him. First, I applied for an expedited visa, then I called Leo and we headed straight for the hottest club downtown. The thumping music, the strobing lights, the writhing bodies on the dance floor, it all gave me a long overdue feeling of freedom and release. I pulled Leo onto the floor, we drank, we danced, and I even boldly ordered a few gorgeous models to our table. Just as I reached out and gently tilted up the chin of the model beside me, the world around us fell eerily silent. I slowly turned my head and saw Chloe Sterling standing there beside our booth. She wore a perfectly tailored black dress, her posture ramrod straight. Her cold, austere presence was a stark contrast to the chaotic, hazy atmosphere of the club. Leo sucked in a sharp breath, shot me a "you're on your own" look, and quickly slipped away. That left just me and Chloe, staring at each other. My guilty hand was still awkwardly frozen on the model's chin. Chloe's gaze dropped to my hand, her eyes instantly turning dark as storm clouds. She strode forward, grabbed my wrist, and shot a glacial look at the model, uttering a single word, "Leave." I yanked my hand away, glaring at her. "Chloe, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice was like ice. "I should be asking you that. Why are you in a place like this?" I answered with a deliberately provocative and careless tone. "I came because I felt like it. What's it to you?" Chloe stared at my defiant, rebellious expression, her eyes growing even darker. The next thing I knew, to my utter shock, she had 2 bodyguards haul me to my feet. Ignoring the stunned looks from everyone around us, they shoved me into a black Rolls-Royce waiting at the curb. She stared at me and said, word by word, "You are about to marry into the Sterling family. The Sterling Code of Conduct, rule number 1, is that you must be home before 10 p.m. You are strictly forbidden from entering nightclubs or similar establishments. Go home and write me a 10,000-word essay of self-reflection." A 10,000-word essay? Family rules? I was so angry I almost laughed, my chest heaving. In my last life, I was shackled by those 3,000 rules, living like a marionette. I would not let that happen again in this life. I practically screamed it. Who's going to write your damn essay? Your family rules have nothing to do with me. I'm not marrying you. As the words hung in the air, the car fell into a dead silence. Chloe whipped her head around, her deep eyes locking onto mine. She ground out the words through clenched teeth. What did you say? Seeing her reaction, my impulse to tell her everything vanished. She hated having a wild fiancé like me. If I told her the groom had been swapped, wouldn't that just be letting her off the hook? No, I was going to make her suffer for a few days. I turned to look out the window. It was nothing. I was just angry. Chloe studied me for a moment, and the storm in her eyes seemed to calm slightly. Sit up straight. Seeing her perfect posture, straight as a board even in her rage, not a single hair out of place, I thought of all her suffocating rules from my past life. Old and new resentments boiled up inside me. I deliberately slumped down in the seat, kicked off my shoes to press my bare feet into the expensive cashmere floor mats, and rolled down the window, letting the wind whip through my hair. Chloe watched me, her brow furrowed, but ultimately, she said nothing. The car stopped in front of my family's mansion. Chloe's cold voice came from behind me. 10,000 words. On my desk tomorrow. Then she ordered the driver to leave. I watched her taillights disappear down the road and kicked a loose stone on the curb. The next morning, Chloe showed up before I was even fully awake. She looked as cold and regal as ever. Her first words to me were, "Where is the essay?" I leaned against the doorframe and yawned. Didn't write it, and I never will. Chloe's expression instantly frosted over. "Ethan, when are you going to learn to listen?" I met her gaze, my own eyes filled with contempt. This is who I am. Obedient? Not in this lifetime. I don't like being controlled by anyone. Just as the tension between us was about to snap, Ryan appeared. Dressed in tasteful casual wear, he carried himself perfectly, a gentle smile on his face. In a low voice, he said, "Chloe, please don't be upset with my brother." Then he handed a neatly written paper to Chloe. "Ethan was probably just in a bad mood yesterday. I've already written the apology for him. I hope this is acceptable." Chloe took the paper, glanced at it, and then looked back at me, the disappointment in her eyes deepening. "You both grew up in the Vance family. Why can't you be more like your brother, more sensible and well-behaved? Now go get changed. You're coming with me to a business reception." I refused without a second thought. "I don't want to go. Take Ryan." Chloe's brow tightened. "Ethan, you are my fiancé." Her words were like a needle to my heart. Chloe wasn't marrying me because she wanted me. She was marrying me because the contract was signed and the Sterlings couldn't back out. It had nothing to do with love. If she had a choice, she would have picked Ryan in a heartbeat. In this life, Ethan Vance, would grant her that wish. In the end, I was dragged to the reception anyway. I chose a flashy, deep red suit, a stark contrast to the elegant, simple white suit Ryan was wearing. When it came time for the opening dance, Chloe's eyes flickered between me and Ryan. Ultimately, she extended her hand to Ryan. A quiet murmur went through the crowd. I couldn't be bothered with it and slipped out onto the terrace for some air. It wasn't long before a persistent shadow followed me out. It was Ryan. He was still flushed with the pleasure of the dance, his eyes gleaming with triumph and provocation. "Brother, I told you, no matter who it is, even Chloe, they'll always choose the more respectable one between us." He paused, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "It's pathetic, really. Your mother couldn't compete with mine, and now you can't compete with me." I whipped around and, without warning, slammed my fist into Ryan's face. His head snapped to the side, a bruise already forming. He clutched his cheek, staring at me in disbelief. "You hit me?" I advanced on him, my presence overwhelming. "So what if I hit you? I'd do more than that. I'd kill you." I grabbed him by the collar, dragged him to the edge of the balcony, and with my custom-made leather shoe, I kicked him hard. "Ah!" Ryan's terrified scream tore through the night as he lost his balance, crashed through the flimsy decorative railing, and plummeted to the ground below. The air filled with screams and chaos from the partygoers downstairs. I stood at the edge of the balcony, coldly watching the crowd gather below around Ryan's still form on the lawn. I felt nothing. I straightened my collar and hair, ready to leave this mess behind. But just as I walked through the ornate doors, a hand seized my wrist from behind. Chloe's eyes bored into me, her voice colder than a grave. "Ryan fell from the terrace. Was that you?" I shook her hand off and admitted it flatly. "What if it was?" Chloe's face became a terrifying mask of fury. "You're completely out of control. You're coming with me to apologize to him." "Apologize?" I laughed as if it were the funniest joke I'd ever heard. "He deserved it. Me apologize to him? Not in this lifetime." "Ethan, you're incorrigible." Chloe was done talking. She turned to her bodyguards. "Since he won't apologize, he needs to be taught a lesson. Throw him in the ornamental pond, and don't let him out until I say so." "Chloe, who the hell do you think you are? You have no right to touch me." I struggled, but her bodyguards were already on me. They lifted me up and tossed me into the freezing water of the pond. It was an early spring night, and the water was bone-chillingly cold. I choked on water, sputtering as I tried to climb out. But every time I reached the edge, a bodyguard would shove me back in. I screamed until my throat was raw. "Chloe, you bitch, let me out of here." My only answer was the suffocating feeling of being pushed under again. Over and over, the cold and the torment numbed my body. Then, a familiar, sharp cramp seized my stomach. My ulcer was flaring up. My body curled in on itself, my face turning white not just from the cold, but from the searing pain. As my consciousness faded, I vaguely heard a bodyguard on the phone. "Miss Sterling, Mr. Vance doesn't look good. Should we continue?" There was a pause on the other end, then Chloe's voice, cold and final. "Continue. Otherwise, he'll never learn. Never learn." In Chloe's eyes, my rebellion, my pain, none of it mattered. All she wanted was for me to obey her rules, to be taught a lesson. A despair 1,000 times worse than the physical pain washed over me, drowning me like the water itself. Tears mixed with the pond water on my face. I couldn't hold on any longer. Everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed. Chloe didn't show up until the day I was discharged. I was playing on my phone when she walked in. "Get your things. I'm taking you home." I didn't even look up. "I'm not going back to the Vance estate." Chloe's expression hardened, her tone final. "Ethan, don't be difficult." She gave me no chance to refuse, pulling me out of the bed and half dragging me from the room and into her car. When we arrived back at the Vance mansion, I shook off Chloe's hand and went straight to my room. The moment I opened the door, my blood ran cold. Ryan was sitting at my desk, admiring a brilliant sapphire watch in the mirror. It was the only thing my mother had left me. My voice was ice. "Who told you you could touch my things? Put it down. Get out." My sudden appearance startled him, but he quickly recovered, a smug grin spreading across his face. He dangled the watch from his fingers. "Ethan, I'm telling you, everything in this house will be mine eventually." I walked towards him, my eyes dangerous. "It seems you didn't learn your lesson from our last encounter on the balcony." Ryan snorted, unafraid. "I was careless last time. You think I'm afraid of you now?" Before he finished speaking, his eyes hardened. He grabbed an antique vase from a shelf and smashed it on the floor, then threw himself down among the shards with a cry of pain. The crash immediately brought Arthur and Elaine running. "What happened?" Arthur demanded as he burst in, his face livid. Ryan immediately pointed at me. "I just wanted to look at his watch, and he pushed me." "Ethan," Arthur roared. Before I could say a word, he stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. The sharp crack of the slap echoed in the room. My cheek instantly swelled, stinging with pain. I tilted my head, tasting the blood from the cut inside my cheek. Instead of exploding, I started to laugh low and dangerous. My laughter unnerved him, which only made him angrier. "What are you laughing at?" I lifted my head, my gaze like a shard of ice, and fixed it on Ryan, who was still playing the victim. "You love to act, don't you? Fine, I'll give you a real reason to cry." In a flash, I grabbed a metal pen from the desk and drove it straight through the back of Ryan's hand, pinning it to the floor. A blood-curdling scream tore from his throat as the pen pierced his flesh, and blood welled up around it. "You're insane." Arthur was shaking with rage, pointing to the door. "Get out. I won't have you in this house." He called the staff, who dragged me out of the mansion and threw my suitcase out onto the street after me. I expressionlessly rubbed my bruised arm. I opened my suitcase, took out my mother's sapphire watch, and clutched it tightly in my hand. I gave the magnificent, cold mansion one last look, then turned and walked away without a second thought. I hadn't gone far when the sky opened up, a sudden downpour soaking me to the bone. Shivering with cold, I ducked under the awning of a nearby shop for shelter. Just then, a familiar black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing Chloe's perfect profile. Her brow furrowed the moment she saw me, soaked and pathetic under the awning. She got out, walked over to me, and ordered, "Get in." I turned my head away. "Leave me alone." Chloe didn't waste any more words. She grabbed my arm and practically forced me into the passenger seat. She handed me a dry towel and drove in silence, taking me to her own penthouse. She gave me a clean shirt and pants to change into, then found a first aid kit and began treating the bruise on my face. She asked quietly, "What happened?" I pressed my lips together and said nothing. 3 days later was Ryan's birthday party. The Vance mansion was extravagantly decorated and buzzing with people. As the eldest son, in name at least, I had to be there. I stood alone in a corner, watching Arthur, his face glowing with pride, showing Ryan off to the guests. He announced he was transferring the majority of his assets to Ryan's name. The air was thick with fawning compliments and envious whispers. Watching them, my heart turned to ice. In all my life, I'd never had a real birthday party. After my mother died, my father didn't care. My birthdays were always spent alone, making a silent wish over a cold cake. As the party reached its peak, people began presenting their gifts. Arthur's gift of property was already shocking, but when Chloe produced a velvet box, revealing a priceless diamond necklace, and personally fastened it around Ryan's neck, the crowd gasped. I couldn't watch anymore. I walked over to the bar and downed a glass of whiskey in one go. Just then, a few of Ryan's friends swaggered over and deliberately shoved me. Well, if it isn't the great Ethan Vance. It's Ryan's birthday, why the long face? Can't stand to see him happy? I set down my glass and turned to leave. "Hey, are you deaf?" another one of them said, grabbing my arm to stop me. That was the last straw. I ripped my arm from his grasp, grabbed a half-full wine bottle from a nearby table, and glared at them. "I gave you a chance to walk away." Before the words were out of my mouth, I brought the bottle down hard on the head of the man closest to me. The bottle shattered, sending a spray of wine and blood. Screams erupted as the party descended into chaos. I moved fast, hitting several more of them before Chloe rushed over and grabbed my wrist in a vice grip. "Ethan, what the hell are you doing now?" I sneered. "You saw what happened. They insulted me. I returned the favor." Seeing I was unrepentant, Chloe ordered her bodyguards, "Take him to the basement. Lock him in the safe room. Don't let him out until I say so." I was dragged from the party and thrown into a small, dark, windowless room in the basement. The moment the door shut, a suffocating darkness closed in on me like a cold tide. On the third day, just as I felt my sanity starting to fray, the door opened. Ryan stood there. He clapped his hands, and 2 large men in black suits stepped in behind him. Ryan said, "Strap him to the chair." I struggled against them. "Ryan, you dare. I'll kill you when I get out of here." But the 2 men easily overpowered me. Ryan laughed. "Kill me? Chloe would stop you before you even got close. Have you forgotten? She always takes my side." His words were a knife, twisting in the deepest wound in my heart. Right or wrong, Chloe always chose to believe and protect Ryan. They forced me into a cold metal chair, strapping my arms and legs down. Then they attached electrodes to my skin. A look of sadistic glee on his face, Ryan pressed a button on the controller in his hand. An intense electric current shot through my body. The searing pain and paralysis ripped a scream from my throat as my body convulsed violently. I don't know how much time passed. I woke up in a soft bed. Chloe was looking down at me, her brow furrowed in concern. "I only told them to leave you in the safe room for 3 days to cool off. How did you get like this?" I closed my eyes, unwilling to look at her or speak. I knew she wouldn't believe me anyway. It didn't matter. If she wouldn't help me, I would get my revenge myself. That night, I hired some people. They found Ryan, who has a crippling fear of heights, stripped him naked, and dangled him from the edge of the Sterling Tower rooftop for the entire night. The next day, Chloe stormed in, furious. "Ethan, you're out of control. You hung Ryan from the rooftop all night. Do you have any idea what could have happened? He struggled so much he fell. If there hadn't been a safety net, he'd be dead." I was sitting by the window. I didn't even bother to look at her. Chloe stared at my impassive face. "You will stay in this house for the next few days. You're not to go anywhere, and you are not to cause any more trouble. Do you understand?" I remained silent, treating her as if she wasn't there. She left, slamming the door behind her. Ryan was finally brought home the night before the wedding, looking pale and shaken. The moment Arthur saw me, he started screaming at me, calling me a monster. I didn't even look at him. The next morning, just as the sun was rising, my phone lit up with the message I'd been waiting for. My visa was approved. I grabbed the suitcase I had already packed and walked out the door without a second thought. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw Ryan, dressed as the groom, being escorted by a crowd of people. Chloe, wearing a stunning red gown and an ornate headdress, was being led towards him. She couldn't see the groom's face, and assuming it was me, she took his hand. Her voice, usually so cold, was uncharacteristically gentle. "Don't be nervous. I'm here." I watched from the shadows of the staircase, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Chloe Sterling, the perfect, self-disciplined heiress, deserved a gentle, respectable husband. In this life, when she lifted her veil and saw who was standing there, I was sure she would be delighted. This was my wedding gift to her. "You're welcome." I walked outside and hailed a cab. The driver asked, "Where to, sir?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a small remote from my pocket and looked out the window at the magnificent mansion, glowing in the morning light. My mother had designed that house, but after she died, my father, his mistress, and his bastard son had tainted it, turning it into a prison that disgusted me. My eyes went cold. Without a moment's hesitation, I pressed the red button. Boom! A deafening roar ripped through the morning air as the explosives I had planted around the mansion detonated. A massive fireball erupted, engulfing the building that held so many of my painful memories. The driver was terrified. "Sir, was that your house?" It exploded. I calmly turned back, fastening my seatbelt. "Yes, I blew it up." The driver slammed on the gas and sped towards the airport. Outside my window, the city blurred past, and the fiery glow that lit up half the sky grew smaller and smaller in the distance. St. Patrick's Cathedral. All eyes were on Chloe, dressed in a magnificent red gown, an ornate golden headdress on her head. She moved through the ceremony with quiet grace. She could feel the groom beside her trembling slightly. Her voice, for once, was soft. "After today, I will personally teach you how to be a worthy husband to me." Hearing these gentle words he had only dreamed of, Ryan was so overcome with emotion he nearly fainted, his trembling growing more violent. Chloe mistook his reaction for nervous excitement, and the faintest hint of a smile touched her lips. She patiently went through the motions of the ceremony, leading the groom towards the altar. Finally, the moment arrived. The officiant's voice boomed through the cathedral. "The groom may now lift the bride's veil." The cathedral fell silent. All eyes were on the couple. Ryan, trying to control his excitement, slowly raised his hand and lifted the veil. The veil fell away. Time seemed to stand still. Chloe lifted her eyes and saw Ryan's face. The smile on her face froze. Her pupils constricted as if she were seeing something impossible, something utterly absurd. The blood rushed to her head. Chloe forced the words through her clenched teeth. "What are you doing here?" She violently flung his hand away, the force sending an unprepared Ryan stumbling backward. He fell hard onto the red carpet, his formal hat askew, looking utterly pathetic. Chloe turned to the crowd, her voice sharp. "Where is he?" Her mother rushed to her side, grabbing her hand. "Chloe, please, continue with the ceremony. We forgot to tell you. The Fiancée sent word a few days ago that they were switching the groom to Ryan. We thought he was a much better fit, so we agreed." Just then, her assistant burst into the cathedral, shouting in a panic, "It's terrible, Ms. Sterling. The Vance mansion exploded half an hour ago. The fire is out of control. The entire estate has been reduced to rubble." The blood in Chloe's veins turned to ice. Ignoring the gasps and screams behind her, she ran from the cathedral like a woman possessed. Her Rolls-Royce sped like a bullet, screeching to a halt in front of the smoldering, blackened ruins of the mansion. Fire hoses were still spraying water onto the wreckage, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke. Chloe threw open the car door and, ignoring the firefighters' warnings, ran like a madwoman into the smoking ruins, screaming my name. Finally, in the ruins of what used to be my bedroom, she found a charred, twisted jewelry box. With trembling hands, she pried it open. Inside were the melted, warped remains of a diamond watch she had once given me. She clutched the ruined watch in her hand. "Ms. Sterling, we found something." Her assistant's voice was shaking as he handed a tablet to the devastated Chloe. The security footage showed a figure hailing a cab about 10 minutes before the explosion. Before getting in, the person looked back at the mansion, then pressed something in their hand. A moment later, the mansion erupted in a ball of fire and smoke. He was alive. A wave of immense relief, followed by an even deeper wave of panic, crashed over Chloe. Chloe shot to her feet, her voice hoarse but filled with an iron command. "Use every resource we have. Lock down every airport, port, and border crossing. Find out what car he got into and where it went. Get me the passenger manifests for every international flight that left this morning. I don't care if you have to search the entire world. Find him." Her assistant didn't dare hesitate and immediately left to carry out her orders. Chloe, disheveled and radiating fury, got back in her car and sped towards the hotel where Arthur and his family were staying. In their hotel suite, Arthur, Elaine, and Ryan were still shaken. When Chloe burst in looking like an avenging angel, they all flinched. Arthur began to stammer, "Chloe, please, let me explain. It was Ethan, that ungrateful brat. He was being stubborn and refused to go through with it. He was the one who suggested letting Ryan take his place. We had no choice. Ryan is much more obedient, more considerate, a much better fit than Ethan." Chloe laughed, a cold, furious sound. She stared at Arthur with venom in her eyes. He offered, "What do you think I am? A piece of property your family can trade around as you see fit? My husband, from the very beginning, was always meant to be Ethan and only Ethan. Now where is he?" Ryan shrank back in fear, but seeing Chloe so frantic over me filled him with a jealous rage. He grabbed her arm, pleading, "Chloe, what does he have that I don't? I love you more than he does. I'll listen to you. I'll never talk back or make you angry. I'll be the perfect husband." "You?" Chloe ripped her arm away, sending Ryan stumbling to the floor again. She looked down at him with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You are nothing compared to him, and I have only ever loved him. If it weren't for him, you and the entire Vance family would mean nothing to me." Ryan looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, collapsing in a heap on the floor. Without another glance at them, Chloe turned and walked out. In her penthouse office at Sterling Corp, Chloe paced like a caged animal, waiting for news. Hours later, her assistant rushed in. "Ms. Sterling, we found something. Mr. Vance applied for an expedited visa a week before the incident at the club." A week before the club, Chloe stopped dead in her tracks, swaying slightly. So his escape wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was premeditated. She suddenly remembered all of my strange behavior, all of my rebellion in the weeks leading up to the wedding. A tidal wave of regret crashed over her. Chloe used every resource at her disposal, both legal and illegal. She turned New York City upside down, then expanded the search nationwide. But it was as if I had vanished from the face of the earth, leaving no trace behind. Anxiety and panic gnawed at her day and night, and she unleashed her fury on the Vance family. Sterling Corp launched a ruthless, systematic attack on their businesses. The already struggling Vance empire quickly crumbled under the pressure, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. No one in the Sterling family could have imagined that when I left, I had taken the soul of their perfect heiress with me. At a business gala, Chloe stood in a corner, a glass of wine in her hand, a world away from the cheerful crowd. Suddenly, she saw a familiar figure from behind. Her heart seized, and she instinctively called out, "Ethan!" She pushed through the crowd, stumbling as she rushed forward and grabbed the man's wrist. The man turned, a look of confusion on his completely unfamiliar face. "Excuse me?" The light in Chloe's eyes died, replaced by a profound despair. She let go of his arm and sagged against a cold marble column. A few weeks later, the atmosphere in Chloe's office was heavy and silent, like the air before a thunderstorm. Her assistant entered cautiously, holding a fresh cup of coffee. "Ms. Sterling, we have a lead." Chloe's head snapped up, her bloodshot eyes fixing on him like a predator. "Speak," she rasped, her voice raw. We used some back channels to cross-reference unofficial travel records from the last 3 months. We found a blurred image of someone who looks a lot like Mr. Vance. He was in the transit area of the international airport in Berlin, Germany, 3 days after he disappeared. Chloe froze, her fingers trembling. It was a sliver of hope, the last straw for a drowning woman, but it brought with it a terrifying fear of losing him all over again. His destination? Where was his connecting flight headed? "We're still working on it. The transit records in Berlin are highly secure, and he used a small, obscure airline. It's going to take some time." Chloe cut him off. "There's no time. Get the jet ready. We're flying to Berlin. Now." 3 hours later, her private jet touched down in Berlin. Before the plane had even taxied to a stop, the door was open. Chloe didn't even wait for the stairs, jumping the last few feet to the tarmac. Ignoring the stunned looks of the ground crew, she and her entourage swept into the terminal like a hurricane. She pushed frantically through the crowds, her eyes scanning every face, every figure, bumping into people without even noticing, leaving a trail of angry complaints in her wake. Finally, she saw the gate. Passengers were lining up to board. Her eyes scanned the line and locked onto a figure at the very end, a man in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. Even from behind, a deep, bone-deep sense of familiarity told her it was me. She cried out, "Ethan!" and launched herself through the crowd like a missile, grabbing my wrist in a death grip as startled travelers stared. My body went rigid. I slowly turned around. Sunglasses hid my eyes, but my jaw was tight, my mouth set in a hard line. I spoke. "Miss Sterling, let go of me. Making a scene in public is unseemly. It's against your rules." My cold, sarcastic, distant tone was like a bucket of ice water dumped over her head. But all she knew was that she had found me, and she couldn't let me disappear again. She gripped my wrist tighter, her voice trembling, almost begging. "Ethan, I know I was wrong. It was all my fault. Please, just come back with me." I tried to pull my arm away, but her grip was like a vice. I let out a short, harsh laugh and stopped struggling. "Go back? Back to that prison with 3,000 rules? Back to being your puppet? Miss Sterling, have you forgotten? Your new groom is my well-behaved, respectable brother, Ryan. The news of the Sterling-Vance merger is all over the internet. Don't you think it's a little pathetic to be clinging to your ex-fiancée in public?" The other passengers were now openly staring, drawn in by the drama. But Chloe didn't care. "No, Ethan, that wedding didn't count. I never acknowledged it. Ethan, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please just come home with me. There will be no more rules. You can do whatever you want. I'll give you anything. Just please, don't leave me." The once proud, untouchable heiress of New York society was now begging a man in the middle of a foreign airport, humbling herself completely. The scene was shocking to everyone who witnessed it. For a moment I froze, seeing her red-rimmed eyes, hearing her desperate, rambling apology. Something deep inside me stirred, but it was quickly replaced by an even deeper, colder resolve. It was too late. What was her pain now compared to the despair I had endured? I took a deep breath and began to pry her fingers off my arm, one by one. "Your apology is too late, and I don't need it." I took a step back, putting distance between us as if she were something unclean. "We were over a long time ago. The moment you chose to believe Ryan, the moment you punished me for him again and again, we were finished. Don't ever show your face to me again. Your devotion, your regret, it all just makes me sick." The word sick landed like a final judgment. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, the last light in them shattering, leaving only darkness and despair. Just then, the final boarding call for the flight to Monaco echoed through the terminal. Without another look at her, I turned, handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, and walked down the jet bridge, my back straight, never looking back. Chloe tried to rush after me, but she was held back by airport security and her own assistant. She struggled like a wounded animal, her eyes, red and wild, fixed on the jet bridge until the door finally closed, cutting me off from her sight. After a long moment, she pushed her assistant away and staggered to her feet. "Mobilize everything. Find out where he's staying in Monaco. This time, I don't care if you have to drag him back in chains. Bring him back to me." 3 months later, the Monte Carlo casino. Another hand was dealt. I tapped my fingers lightly on the table, signaling a raise. My movements were smooth, radiating a calm confidence. I turned over my cards. The dealer announced impassively, "Player wins," and pushed a mountain of chips my way. A murmur of awe and envy went through the onlookers. "That's the 7th hand in a row he's won. Look at him, so calm. He's no amateur." I took a sip of my champagne, a faint smile on my lips. It wasn't luck. It was calculation and psychology. Chloe had forced me to study countless subjects I'd considered useless, including advanced probability and behavioral psychology. I never thought they'd actually come in handy. Just as I was about to place my next bet, a portly, middle-aged man in a loud shirt stumbled through the crowd towards me. His eyes were bloodshot from losing, he reeked of alcohol, and he was staring greedily at my stack of chips. "Hey pal, you're on a roll," he slurred, reaching for my chips. "You've got so many, how about you share the luck? Spot me half." My eyes went cold. Before his grimy hand could touch my chips, I moved. In one fluid motion, I kicked the back of his knee, and as he fell, I brought my heel down, snapping the bones in his hand. The man let out a piercing scream, clutching his shattered hand as he writhed on the floor in agony. The crowd erupted in chaos. I looked down at the man on the floor, then calmly cashed in my chips, ready to leave the scene. Just then, a lazy female voice cut through the noise. "Making a scene in my casino? And touching someone under my protection? Charlie, are you still drunk from last night? Or do you just have a death wish?" The crowd parted to let a woman in a fiery red slip dress stroll through. She moved with a lazy, arrogant grace. She had a stunning, exotic face, and her almond-shaped eyes swept over the room with casual indifference until they landed on me. A flicker of undisguised interest lit them up. It was Scarlet Knight. She walked over to the whimpering Charlie and nudged him with the toe of her stiletto. Her tone was light, but held an undeniable menace. "Get out of my sight, and don't let me ever see you near him again." She gestured to me with a smirk. "Next time, it won't be just your hand." The moment Charlie saw her, he was like a mouse that had seen a cat. He scrambled to his feet and fled without a word. Only then did Scarlet turn to face me, her eyes locking onto mine. She walked right up to me and casually linked her arm through mine, as if we were lovers. I tensed, instinctively trying to pull away, but her grip, though it looked casual, was surprisingly strong. She leaned in close, her warm breath tickling my ear, and murmured in a voice only I could hear, "Fresh from New York, are we? You've got sharp claws. I've had my eye on you for a while." She pulled back slightly, her eyes burning into mine, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "That blind fool Chloe Sterling doesn't want you? Fine, I do. From now on, you're with me. In Monaco, in all of Southern Europe, you'll have a life 1,000 times better than you ever did in that miserable city. What do you say?" Her blunt, almost crude declaration stunned the onlookers. Scarlet Knight, the infamous wild child of the Knight family, was notoriously picky. Countless rich heirs had thrown themselves at her, and she hadn't given them the time of day. And now, here she was, making a very public play for a complete unknown. I was taken aback myself. I met her gaze, her eyes seemingly playful, but with a hidden depth. I raised an eyebrow, a half-smile playing on my lips. "I appreciate the offer, Ms. Knight, but do I look like a man who needs a woman to fight his battles for him?" Instead of being offended, she burst out laughing, her arm tightening around mine. The interest in her eyes deepened into open admiration. "Wild, I like it. You're exactly my type." I ended up staying in Monaco, and Scarlet, true to her word, began to pursue me with the force of a hurricane. The next day, a limited edition yellow Lamborghini was parked outside my rented apartment. The keys were delivered to my door with a card that read, in a flamboyant script, "Something to get around in. If you wreck it, it's on me." A few days later, she chartered a massive luxury yacht and threw an extravagant party, inviting half of Monaco's high society. She dragged me along as the guest of honor. We stood at the bow as the sun set over the Mediterranean, and she gestured to the coastline. "This is your playground now," she said. "Just mention my name." She took me skydiving, deep-sea diving, even sneaking onto a track to race F1 cars. We did everything wild and adventurous, everything that broke the rules. She never asked me to be proper or restrained. In fact, the more daring I was, the more she cheered me on. After one skydive, we landed on a soft, sandy beach. Scarlet took off her goggles and looked at me, my eyes still bright with adrenaline. She grinned. "Ethan, this is how you're meant to live, wild and free without a single damn rule. This is the real you." I caught my breath, looking at this wild, vibrant woman. Her fiery, unconditional acceptance of me began to melt a corner of my frozen heart. With her, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to be careful. I could finally be the person I had suppressed for so long. Scarlet took me to a high-stakes, underground poker game. My luck was terrible, and I lost big hand after hand. When I hesitated on a call, she lazily pushed a huge stack of her own chips towards me. "Call," she said. "What are you afraid of? If you lose, it's on me. If you win, it's yours." We lost more than we won that night, but I had never felt so free. Scarlet was driving us back. She was quiet for a while, then she spoke, her voice losing its usual teasing tone. "Ethan, we've actually met before. A long time ago." I turned to look at her, surprised. "Years ago, at the Belmont Stakes in New York. You were there. How old were you? 17? 18? You were with your father and that brother of yours. Your brother tried to set you up to fail, but you ended up winning the race, beating some arrogant jerk who looked down on you. The way you laughed on that horse, so wild and triumphant. I remember thinking, now there's a guy who knows how to live." I was stunned. I had almost forgotten that day. I never imagined anyone else would remember it. Scarlet sighed, a hint of regret in her voice. "But back then, you only had eyes for Chloe Sterling. It was Chloe this and Chloe that. I knew better than to try and compete, so I stayed away." Her words were like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples through me. To think that someone had seen the real me, back when even I had started to forget who that was. Our connection deepened after that. But the moment that truly changed everything was an accident. We were dirt biking in the mountains. It was getting dark on our way down, and the trail was slick with mud. I took a turn too fast, My bike skidded, and I went flying towards the edge of a steep ravine. In a split second, Scarlett, who was right behind me, gunned her engine, slammed her bike into mine, knocking me back onto the path. But the impact sent her and her bike careening over the edge. I slammed on my brakes and scrambled down the embankment. I found her pinned under her bike, bruised and bleeding, but when she saw me, she managed a weak grin. "Don't worry," she rasped. "I'm too stubborn to die." In the hospital, her head was bandaged and her arm was in a cast, but she still acted like it was nothing. She looked at me, sitting by her bedside, her expression unusually serious. "Ethan, I know you're wounded. I know what that bitch Chloe did to you. I'm not in a hurry. I have all the time in the world. Whenever you're ready, when you've healed and you feel like you might want to try again." She paused, her eyes intense and sincere. "Just consider me first, okay? Give me a chance." Her directness, her patience, the way she had saved me without a second thought, the sincerity hidden beneath her wild exterior. It was all like a warm light, finally reaching the coldest, most frozen parts of my heart. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't push her away. I just looked down. Something inside me was beginning to change. I started to think I could get used to this life. But then, just a few days later, Chloe found me. I was coming home after a night out when she appeared out of nowhere, blocking the entrance to my apartment building. "Ethan, have you had enough of this game? You're coming back with me." She stared at me, her eyes bloodshot, filled with a desperate mixture of pain, anger, and obsession. I frowned, my voice like ice. "Miss Sterling, let go of me. I don't believe we're acquainted." "Ethan!" she snarled, grabbing me with her other hand, trying to drag me with her. Just then, another hand shot out and clamped down on Chloe's wrist. It was Scarlett. She looked as lazy and unconcerned as ever, but her eyes were sharp and cold. "Miss Sterling, putting your hands on another woman's boyfriend in public? That's not a good look. You can't force someone to love you. Even a child knows that." With a deft twist of her wrist, she forced Chloe to let go of me, then pulled me to her side. Chloe's gaze shot to Scarlett, and when she saw Scarlett's arm linked through mine, her pupils constricted. A sudden, violent rage burned away the last of her composure. "Scarlet Knight," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "Let go of him. You, a party girl who goes through men faster than she goes through clothes. I'm warning you. Don't touch him, or I will destroy you." Scarlett just laughed, looking at Chloe with disdain. "I may be a lot of things, Miss Sterling, but I've never made my man write a 10,000-word apology. I've never locked him in a dark room for days. And I've certainly never stood by and watched him nearly drown while saying he needed to be taught a lesson." With every word, the color drained from Chloe's face. She swayed, as if struck by an invisible blow. Scarlett stepped closer, her eyes like daggers. "Chloe," she said, her voice low and sharp, "you call that love?" Her words were a knife, twisting in Chloe's deepest wound. The color drained from her face, her lips trembled, but she couldn't speak. The world swam before her eyes, and she staggered. "Shut up," she rasped, lunging to pull me away from Scarlett. Scarlett's eyes went cold. Her patience had run out. The two powerful, elegant women began to fight, right there on the street, as shocked onlookers scrambled to get out of their way. In the chaos, Chloe broke free and rushed at me again, grabbing my arm, her eyes wild and obsessive. "You're coming with me." Scarlett was held back by Chloe's bodyguards, and she screamed, "Chloe, let him go." But Chloe wasn't listening. She had only one thought in her mind: take me, lock me away, and never let me leave again. She dragged me through the crowd and shoved me into a black sedan. By the time Scarlett broke free, all she saw were the car's taillights disappearing down the street. She kicked a nearby trash can with a furious roar, her eyes blazing. She whipped out her phone, her voice dangerously calm. "Get me the flight plan for Chloe Sterling's private jet. Find out where she's taking him, and get my men ready. We're going to get him back." Chloe's jet landed at a secluded estate outside New York City. I was escorted inside. I didn't speak, didn't resist. I just watched her with cold, distant eyes. My cold stare was like a knife in her heart. She tried to make amends. She, who never cooked, tried to make me a meal. I didn't even look at it. Her hope began to fade. She knelt before me, her voice pleading. "Please eat something. I know I was wrong. It was all my fault. There will be no more rules, I swear. You can do whatever you want. Just please don't leave me. Don't look at me like that. I can't bear it. Why can't you forgive me?" Her voice was choked with sobs, filled with a terrible, aching regret. I finally turned to look at her, my expression calm, but with an abyss of ice beneath the surface. "Chloe, you're pathetic." She flinched as if I had struck her. I continued, my voice flat, each word a deliberate cut. You want to know why? Because you had me thrown into a freezing pond and told them to keep me there even as I was convulsing in pain. Because you locked me in a dark room, and when Ryan tortured me, you didn't believe me. Because every single time you had to choose between me and him, you never, ever chose me. So you tell me you love me. How am I supposed to believe that? With every word, the color drained further from her face. She swayed, looking as if she might collapse. She was speechless. She staggered to her feet, trying to escape the suffocating tension in the room, and knocked over my suitcase. It burst open, its contents spilling across the floor. She knelt to pick things up, and as she was stuffing them back into the suitcase, her fingers brushed against something hard, tucked into a hidden pocket. She pulled it out. It was a medical file. As if compelled by some unseen force, she opened it. Diagnosis: deep second-degree burns with associated infection. Long-term physical therapy required. Monitor for hypertrophic scarring. Psychological counseling recommended for symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. Burns? Boiling water? Chloe's breath caught in her throat. She slammed her fist into the wall, blood splattering across the white paint, but she didn't seem to feel the pain. She scrambled back to me, grabbing at my clothes like a madwoman. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know it was so bad. Hit me. Kill me. Do whatever you want. Just please, forgive me. Give me one more chance. I looked down at her, my expression unmoved, my eyes cold. I accept your apology, but I will never forgive you. Just then, the sound of a loud crash and a blaring alarm came from outside, followed by the sounds of a fight. The living room door burst open. Scarlett stood there, flanked by several of her men. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were sharp as a hawk's. She took in the scene in an instant, me on the sofa, and Chloe kneeling on the floor. Scarlett strode forward, giving the hysterical Chloe a wary look, and reached for my hand. Are you okay? Let's go. I took her hand and stood up without a moment's hesitation. Chloe snapped out of her stupor and tried to stop me. No, Ethan, don't go. I paused at the door and looked back at her one last time, my eyes calm, my voice delivering the final verdict. Chloe, seeing you like this, in so much pain, I think it's karma. Don't ever come looking for me again, or else. I paused, my tone casual, but the threat was unmistakable. I wouldn't mind making the headlines about Sterling Corp a little more interesting tomorrow. She watched my back disappear through the doorway, then collapsed to the floor in a heap. I disappeared again. This time, with Scarlett's help, my disappearance was total, and Chloe's search for me grew even more frantic. A month later, at New York's annual business summit, the city's elite were all in attendance. When Chloe Sterling appeared at the entrance, a stunned silence fell over the room. Everyone stared in disbelief. The once meticulously perfect, rigidly formal CEO of Sterling Corp now had wild, silver-gray hair. She was wearing a rebellious red blouse and a black miniskirt, her eyes dark with smoky, decadent makeup. The contrast with the impeccably dressed executives trailing behind her was jarring and absurd. She ignored the shocked and disapproving stares and walked straight to the podium. She picked up the microphone. No greetings, no pleasantries. Effective immediately, she announced, Sterling Corp will be undergoing a complete restructuring. She paused, then continued. At the same time, I am abolishing the Sterling family's century-old code of conduct. She looked out at the sea of shocked faces and delivered her final line. From now on, the rules of the Sterling family, my rules, will be whatever Ethan Vance decides they are. With that, she dropped the microphone and walked off the stage, ignoring the explosion of noise from the audience, unconcerned with what this would do to her company's stock price. It was her own crazy, clumsy way of sending me a message that was nonetheless crystal clear. She was willing to burn her entire world to the ground for just one more chance with me. After Scarlett rescued me from Chloe's clutches, she took me to a secluded villa in the south of France. Scarlett became surprisingly patient and gentle. No more casinos or wild parties. Instead, we had breakfast in a garden overflowing with flowers, read books under a grape arbor in the afternoon sun, and took long, aimless drives down quiet country roads. She never mentioned Chloe, never brought up the past. She just quietly, in her own way, began to chase the shadows away. She noticed I was having nightmares, and she started sitting out on the terrace outside my room at night, softly strumming a guitar, playing simple, soothing melodies until I fell back asleep. With her by my side, I slowly began to smile again. One day, Scarlett arranged for us to go skydiving again. I stood at the open door of the plane, looking down at the world spread out below. I took a deep breath. I was nervous, but more than that, I was excited. Scarlett squeezed my hand and shouted over the wind, "Scared?" I shook my head. "No." She grinned, her smile dazzling in the bright sun. "Ethan, I know you're hurt. I know what she did to you." Her usual playful look was gone, replaced by a raw, burning sincerity. "I'm not going to make a lot of empty promises. I'm just going to ask you one thing. Will you give me a chance?" She gripped my hand tighter. "Let me take care of you. Let me spend the rest of my life healing the wounds Chloe gave you. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up for you. If you want to cause trouble, I'll clear the way. I've never been this serious about anyone in my life. Ethan, it's you. It's always been you." Her confession was blunt, almost crude, but it was like a ray of pure, hot sunlight piercing through to the coldest, darkest corner of my heart. I looked into her eyes, saw the raw, honest love there, and something inside me that had been wound tight for so long finally, completely, let go. I looked at her, and a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. I squeezed her hand back and shouted over the wind, "Yes!" One word perfectly clear. Scarlett froze for a second, then a wave of pure joy washed over her. She threw her arms around me and kissed me, hard. The instructor behind us cleared his throat with a laugh. Scarlett pulled back, but she didn't let go of my hand. We looked at each other, smiled, and then, together we jumped. The stomach-lurching feeling of freefall, the roar of the wind in my ears. But I wasn't afraid. I spread my arms, reveling in the feeling, looking at the woman beside me, my heart filled with hope for the future. New York, the penthouse office of Sterling Corporation. It was as silent as a tomb. Chloe was slumped in her oversized office chair, empty liquor bottles scattered at her feet. She was frighteningly thin. Her phone screen was lit up, displaying a blurry, but still clear paparazzi photo. It was me at an outdoor cafe in a small town in the south of France. I was laughing, feeding a spoonful of ice cream to Scarlett, who was sitting across from me, looking at me with a look of pure adoration. A strangled cough. A spray of blood erupted from Chloe's mouth, spattering the phone screen and the expensive carpet. She began to cough violently, but she still wouldn't give up. She flew to the south of France and stood outside the gates of our villa in the pouring rain. She was burning with fever, but she refused to leave until she finally collapsed in a muddy puddle. Just before she lost consciousness, she thought she saw a curtain move in a second-floor window. She woke up in a strange room. Scarlett was leaning in the doorway, watching her coldly. "You just don't know when to quit, do you, Chloe?" Chloe struggled to sit up, her voice a raw whisper. "Ethan," Scarlett cut her off. "He doesn't want to see you. He asked me to give you a message." Chloe held her breath. Scarlett repeated his words, slowly and clearly. "Stop disturbing my happiness." Each word was an icicle to the heart, shattering the last, fragile sliver of hope she had left. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Silent tears streamed down her face. Like a soulless doll, she allowed Scarlett's men to put her on a plane back home. Chloe finally giving up didn't stop the other storm that was brewing. I was no longer the weak, helpless boy who had to endure whatever was thrown at him. With Scarlett's backing, I began to orchestrate the final downfall of the Vance family. I anonymously submitted a mountain of irrefutable evidence of Arthur's years of tax evasion, embezzlement, and bribery to the Attorney General. The evidence was overwhelming. He was arrested in his office. The Vance Corporation's stock plummeted, and the company was bankrupt overnight. In the prison visiting room, I looked through the glass at the man on the other side, his hair now completely white. Arthur slammed his hands against the glass, his face contorted with rage. "Ethan, I'm your father. How could you do this to me? You'll pay for this." I picked up the receiver, a cold smile on my lips. "Pay for it? Arthur, when you brought Elaine into our home, when you let Ryan hurt me again and again, when you sold me off like a piece of property for your own gain, did you ever think about the consequences? This is you paying for it. I hope you have a long time to think about it in here." Elaine couldn't handle the sudden, catastrophic change in her fortunes. She had a complete mental breakdown and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. Ryan, having lost everything, made one last, desperate gamble. He found Chloe's new home and knelt at her gate, sobbing. "Chloe, I know I was wrong. Please, help my father, help our family. You're the only one who can save us now. For the sake of the love I once had for you." The gate opened. Chloe came out and looked down at the pathetic, groveling man at her feet, her expression completely blank. In his desperation, Ryan somehow managed to find me. "Ethan, you bastard. You'll die for this. You took everything from me. You'll pay. I curse you." I watched him, as calm as if I were watching a frantic insect. I leaned down close to his ear. "Do you know why I let you live this long? Ryan's eyes widened in terror. A cruel smile touched my lips. Because I wanted you to be alive to watch everything you ever cared about, your family, your money, your pride, that pathetic love of yours, all of it turned to dust. Watching you squirm, long and painfully, like a rat in a sewer, that's so much more satisfying than simply killing you. My words finally broke him. His mind snapped. He ran off, screaming and laughing hysterically. After that, a new madman roamed the streets of New York, a ragged figure who would either giggle or scream at passers-by. I stood at the window of our villa, watching the sun sink below the horizon, a strange sense of peace settling over me. Scarlett came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. My bond with Scarlett grew stronger every day. We traveled the world, reveling in our freedom and our love for each other. We thought the storms were finally behind us. But we never imagined that Ryan, the madman we had long forgotten, was plotting a final, insane act of revenge. We were on a small island in the Caribbean. We had just finished a dive and were heading back to our hotel along a deserted coastal road when several vans swerved out of nowhere, blocking our path. A group of masked, armed men jumped out, their target clearly me. Scarlett reacted instantly, fighting them off, trying to protect me. But there were too many of them and they were prepared. She was quickly injured and overpowered. "Let him go!" Scarlett screamed, her eyes blazing with fury. Ryan stepped out from behind one of the vans. He was filthy, his hair matted, his eyes wild and unfocused. He was holding a gun. He pointed it at me and began to laugh, a high, unhinged sound. "Ethan, I finally have you. Now you're going to pay for all the pain you caused me, 100 times over. I'm going to send you and your whore to hell together." Just then, a black SUV came roaring up from behind, smashing through the vans blocking the road. A thin figure, radiating a deadly resolve, jumped out of the driver's seat. It was Chloe. She had been following me secretly from a distance. When she learned we were on the island, she had only meant to watch from afar, but she had spotted Ryan and his men and, sensing something was wrong, had followed them. "Let him go!" Chloe screamed, her eyes red, staring at Ryan like a cornered animal. Ryan stared at her for a second, then his crazed laughter grew even louder. "Ha ha ha, you came too? Perfect. I can send you all to hell together." Chloe took a step forward, her voice a raw whisper. "Whatever you want, take it from me. Let him go. Take my life instead." Ryan sneered. "Your life? I don't want your life. I want him to suffer. I want you to watch." To torment her, Ryan and his men began to taunt me, then started beating the helpless Scarlett with clubs. Chloe's eyes were bloodshot, her fists clenched, but she was powerless to stop them. Ryan pointed the gun at my head and screamed at Chloe, "You want him to live? Get on your knees and beg me." Chloe looked at my pale face, and without a moment's hesitation, she fell to her knees on the rough pavement. The sound of her knees hitting the concrete was sickening. The proudest woman in New York, humbling herself completely for the man she loved. "Ha ha ha, look at you now, Chloe Sterling." Ryan shrieked with laughter. Beat her to death." The blows rained down on her. She grunted in pain, curling into a ball, but always keeping her body between them and me. Blood streamed from her mouth, from a gash on her forehead. "No, Scarlett, Chloe, get out of here. Run," I screamed, my heart twisting in agony as I watched them being beaten for me, tears blurring my vision. In the chaos, Scarlett, beaten and barely conscious, managed to break free and lunged at Ryan. Startled, Ryan spun around, raising the gun. Bang! The shot rang out. In that split second, with a strength that seemed impossible, Chloe launched herself from the ground, tackling me and covering my body with her own. A sickening thud. The bullet hit her squarely in the back. Blood sprayed out, soaking my shirt. Time stood still. Chloe's body was a dead weight on top of me. She struggled to turn her head, and when she saw that I was unharmed, a faint, pained smile touched her bloody lips. A smile of relief, of regret, of a deep and endless love. She tried to raise her hand, to touch my face, but it fell, lifeless, to her side. She looked at me, each word a struggle, each one costing her the last of her strength. "Ethan, I'm sorry. This time, I finally protected you. Live a good life." With Scarlett. Before she could finish, her head lolled to the side, and she went limp in my arms. The sound of sirens grew closer. Paramedics carefully lifted Chloe's bloody, unconscious body onto a stretcher. I stood there, her warm blood still soaking my clothes, my face pale, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Scarlett put her arm around me, trying to hold me steady. The light outside the operating room stayed on for 12 hours. Scarlett and I waited. When the surgeon finally came out, exhausted, and told us that she had survived, but was not out of the woods, that her recovery would be long and difficult, and that she would have permanent injuries, my legs gave out from under me. Chloe was in a coma in the ICU for 2 weeks. When Chloe finally opened her eyes, the world was a blurry white, and her body was racked with pain. Her vision slowly focused, and she saw me, sitting by her bed, my face drawn and tired. Our eyes met. The air in the room grew still. My expression was complicated. There was concern and relief, but mostly, there was a sense of finality, of peace. The love, the hate, it was all gone. Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but only a hoarse whisper came out. She saw the peace in my eyes, and she saw Scarlett standing behind me, a protective hand on my shoulder. The last, faint flicker of hope in her heart died out. She slowly closed her eyes, and 2 silent tears traced paths down her temples. She was alive, but something inside her was gone forever. 3 months later, Chloe could walk, but only with the help of a cane. Her left leg was permanently damaged. She never tried to contact me again. She sold all of her property in New York, and one foggy morning, with only a small bag, she boarded a plane to a private clinic in Switzerland. Her departure was like closing the final chapter of a long and painful book. The past was finally over. My life truly began. Scarlett and I started to travel the world. We saw the northern lights in Norway, soaked in the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, chased the Great Migration across the Serengeti, and explored the Amazon rainforest. Scarlett, in her own extravagant and imaginative way, showed me everything the world had to offer, and I finally, truly, let my suppressed nature run free. I smiled more and more, a real, genuine smile. The freedom and joy I felt radiated from me. I was finally living as my true self. In an old chateau in the south of France, surrounded by fields of lavender, Scarlett booked the entire estate, telling me we were just going to a small party. That evening, she took my hand and we walked through the lavender fields. In the center of the estate was a glass conservatory, filled with roses and fairy lights. She stopped and turned to face me. I looked at her, confused. Her expression was more serious and nervous than I had ever seen it. She cleared her throat and pulled a small velvet box from her pocket. Inside was a unique, beautifully designed ring. "Ethan," she said, her voice a little tight with nerves, but perfectly clear. "I know I have a reputation. I know I've been wild, reckless." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh, but her gaze was firm and intense. "But after I met you, I realized that all those years, I wasn't really living. I just want to be with you, to be wild and reckless with you, to do all the crazy things we haven't done yet. I love you, not because I want to lock you away and turn you into some perfect, polished trophy. Not because I want you to follow a bunch of stupid rules." She took a deep breath. "I love you just the way you are. I love your wildness, your freedom. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, protecting you, making sure you can always be this happy, this free." "So," she held up the ring, her eyes filled with hope and a flicker of nervousness. "Will you marry me? Let me take care of you for the rest of our lives." No flowery language, no empty promises. Just a blunt, direct, purely Scarlett proposal. And it moved me more than any pretty words ever could. I looked at this woman, who accepted every part of me, who offered me a world of freedom, and I felt my eyes grow warm. A wide, happy smile spread across my face. I held out my hand and nodded, my voice clear and strong. "Yes, I will." Scarlett froze for a second, then let out a whoop of pure joy. She fumbled with the ring, finally sliding it onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. She jumped up and down like a little kid, shouting out over the lavender fields, "Yes, I'm finally marrying you." I pulled her into my arms, laughing until tears streamed down my face. The setting sun bathed us in a warm, golden light. We were married on a private island in the Mediterranean. No press, just our closest friends. I wore a simple white suit. Scarlett wore a white satin mermaid gown and looked breathtakingly beautiful. When the officiant asked for my vows, I looked into Scarlett's eyes and said, clearly and firmly, "I do." When it was Scarlett's turn, she grinned and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I do. I'll marry this man who makes me want to be a better person. From now on, he can be as wild and reckless as he wants, and I'll be there to back him up." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. The reception was a wild party on the beach. Scarlett and I danced for hours, from waltzes to sambas, until finally she just picked me up and spun me around and around on the sand, our laughter echoing across the water. As fireworks exploded over our heads, Scarlett held me close and whispered in my ear, "A little better than that disaster of a wedding in New York, huh?" I leaned against her, watching the brilliant display, my heart full and at peace. I knew, in that moment, that I had finally left the darkness of my past behind and stepped into a bright and shining future. Married life was sweet and never boring. Scarlett, true to her word, gave me all the freedom and support I could ever want. We made our home in France, but we spent most of our time traveling. I took up photography again, and my work, with its unique and vibrant style, started getting published in magazines. I even had my own solo exhibition to rave reviews. One night, after we watched a documentary about raising children, I turned to Scarlett and said, very quietly, "Scarlett, I don't think I want to have kids." I said it cautiously. I knew she loved me, but for families like hers, producing an heir was everything. Scarlett was in the middle of a video game. She didn't even look up. "Okay," she said, "then we won't." I was stunned. "You don't mind? What about your family?" She put down her controller and threw herself into my arms. "Mind what? I married you because I love you, not to be my personal incubator. And my family can go to hell. I marry who I want, and whether or not we have kids is none of their damn business. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me." Her support was so absolute, so unconditional. I was overcome with love and gratitude, and I leaned in and kissed her. She was surprised for a second, then she kissed me back, deeply. When she finally pulled away, she was breathless. "Besides," she said, pressing her forehead against mine, "I'm perfectly happy with it just being the two of us." With Scarlett's unconditional support, my career flourished. I continued with my photography and painting, and with my growing influence and the Knight family's resources, I started a foundation for underprivileged children. My life was more fulfilling, more vibrant than I had ever imagined. I was finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. We were in Vienna at a classical music gala. I was older now, more mature, more at ease with myself. Scarlett was still as vibrant as ever, but with a new, quiet confidence. We were still, after all these years, a striking couple. During intermission, I excused myself to use the restroom. Scarlett was pulled into a conversation with an old friend, a famous composer. As I was walking down the plushly carpeted hall, I rounded a corner and came face to face with someone. It was a woman in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse. She wore a simple dark coat, a blanket over her lap. Her hair was almost completely white, but her eyes were still deep and held a quiet, weary peace. It was Chloe. I stopped walking. She saw me too. Our eyes met for a brief moment. There was no drama, no spark of old emotion. My heart was perfectly still. It was like seeing a stranger you feel you might have known, once a long time ago. For a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, a flicker of something crossed her face, then it was gone, replaced by a calm acceptance, and even a hint of what looked like a genuine, silent blessing. The corner of her mouth twitched, as if she were trying to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. She gave me a slow, deliberate nod. I looked away and continued down the hall, walking past her without a backward glance. Her wheelchair continued in the opposite direction. We were like two lines that had crossed once, now heading off into infinity, never to meet again. Scarlett finished her conversation and came over, wrapping her arm around my waist. "See someone you know?" I shook my head and took her arm. "No, just a stranger. Let's go back. The second half is about to start." A few years later, in Paris, at the award ceremony for the world's most prestigious photography prize, I won the grand prize for a series of documentary photos. I stood on the stage, in the spotlight, and calmly accepted the heavy award. The audience was filled with the world's top artists, celebrities, and press. I gave my acceptance speech, first in fluent French, then in English, thanking the judges and the committee. Then I paused, and my eyes found the woman in the front row, who was looking at me with a gaze full of pride. Finally, I switched back to English, my voice clear and full of emotion. "There is one person I have to thank above all others. I want to thank her for being a brilliant, stubborn, beautiful light in the darkest time of my life. Thank you for never trying to change me, for never trying to smooth my rough edges, but for protecting them, for celebrating them, and for giving me the freedom to finally be myself, wild, reckless, and happier than I ever thought possible." The camera cut to a close-up of Scarlett. She looked surprised for a moment, then a huge, proud, happy grin spread across her face. She gave the camera a playful wink, and the audience erupted in laughter and applause. I smiled and held up the award. "This is for you too, Scarlett. Thank you, my love." The after-party went late into the night. When we finally got back to our hotel suite, Scarlett shooed away the last of the well-wishers. I sank onto the sofa by the window, exhausted, looking out at the lights of Paris, the award sitting forgotten on the table beside me. Scarlett brought me a glass of water and sat down beside me, settling into my arms. She didn't say anything, just held me. After a long, comfortable silence, she murmured, "You really made me proud tonight, husband." I smiled, feeling a deep, comforting warmth and a sense of nostalgia. All those years ago at Belmont, when I first saw you, I thought, there's a man who's like a fire that will never go out. So wild, so bright. She tightened her arms around me. When I heard you were with Chloe, I was so disappointed. I thought, what a waste to let a spirit like that be smothered by all those stupid rules. And then, when I saw you in Monaco, I knew it was my chance. She laughed softly. You were so cold then, so angry, but the fire was still there, underneath it all. I knew then that I had to have you, that I would spend the rest of my life protecting that fire, and never let anyone try to put it out again. She tilted her head up and gave me a long, slow, gentle kiss. Then she rested her forehead against mine and looked into my eyes. "Ethan," she said, her voice full of a deep, quiet sincerity. "Being with you is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I will spend the rest of my life protecting you, making sure you can always be this wild, this free, this happy." I smiled and laced my fingers through hers. "Thank you," I said, "for letting me be Ethan, the real, brilliant, dazzling Ethan."